bro, you have to go in the vault, get all of that stuff, sample some stuff. Some stuff is just like knowing the limitations of your keyboard and what programming techniques get you to this sound, how they made it, what did they use. If you don't have an Oberheim OB8 or OBXA, what do you use instead to sound like that?
Hello and welcome to the Keyboard Chronicles, a podcast for keyboard players. I'm your host, David Holloway, and I'm thrilled as always to be here with you. I've just wrapped up 90 minutes of and this is a big call because we've had some amazing guests, but this is definitely one of the highlight interviews over what's coming up to 100 episodes. And this is obviously the first of two parts with Mr. Maurice Hayes. So as you'll hear, Maurice played an absolutely pivotal role in the new power generation and working with Prince, and he's got some absolutely stunning stories on that time. But as you'll hear, there is a lot more to Maurice than that, and he just gives some really pivotal insights. If you're a weekend warrior, a professional player, there's just so much gold in this interview. I can't wait for you to hear it. Hope you enjoy it as much as I enjoyed recording it. Maurice, it's an absolute honour and a pleasure to have you on the show. Cannot thank you enough. Great to have you here.
Hey, man, I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
No, look, I'm really keen to delve into your amazing career. I thought I might start off with just what you're up to now. How's 2023 been for you? You've had a busy year?
Yeah, it's been cool, man. Quite a few things going on. One thing is, as it turns out, right at the current moment, I'm working with one of my former band members with Prince, one of the dancers, Maya McLean, the twins that we have, and we're working on her record right now. So we just literally just started a few days ago. She just came in from LA, and we're here in the studio working on this next record. I'm also working with the former members of the NPG on some material as well, and my own thing, my own stuff.
Yes.
So I'm trying to stay busy, and I have my longtime mentor, Craig Rice, who was one of Prince's managers back in the day, is working on a film, and I'm doing the score for this film, and he'll be here in 2 days. So it's kind of a little stacked up as of right now. I have actually these couple of things overlapping, and so I'm looking forward to all of the possibilities.
Yeah, absolutely. And it sounds like they all have roots back into other parts of your amazing career. And we will talk about your film and TV work amongst many other things. So let's take a jump back. I know you grew up in a small, well, in Australia, we'd call it a city, but I know in the US, you'd call it more of a small town in Jefferson, Arkansas. What are your strongest musical memories that you think have still had an influence on you today as far as your upbringing?
Well, I started in the church. I mean, that was a big part of my upcoming and upbringing was, being a small kid in church and then start playing in church. And that was the roots and the foundation of what my sound became. And I think that was one of the things that attracted Prince to me, was that vibe. And, as soon as I joined the band, he got me a big plexiglass Hammond organ, and that became a signature sound for the era that I was playing,
No, that's great. And I know in your biography, I loved your biography on your website. You talk about how you faked your way into your first college band. Tell us more about that, because there's a lot of us out here who watch and listen to the show that probably feel like we're fakes at the best of times. So, yeah, how did you start that off?
It was interesting, man, and that's so true because I was going to college, and I was okay at church and everything. I could kind of at that point get my way through and everything, but I wasn't super hot on the whole secular music side. Wasn't big on that. And so I was in college with these guys from that I ended up president of fraternity and everything, and I had these frat brothers that were in these bands, and they were all in choir and different kind of things, and they got me in this band. And we actually had a really good keyboard player named Shelby Henry, and we called him Buck. And he was the real guy. He was the guy that really could put it down. I just happened to have some equipment. And my brother had some PA equipment, and I had a Fender Rhodes, and my first synthesizer was a Moog Source, not a Moog Source, but a satellite. and I got a source later. But and so I had this a bit of gear, and and I was able to like get in this band, but man, I was not so good. And Buck really held the heavy lifting. He did that. But what happened is he decided to really hunker down and get his schooling together, and then he left the band, and I was like really the keyboard player at that point. And Bill Clinton was running for governor in the state here in Arkansas. And we had a show, and they said, "Well, you got to do it, or else you're gonna look really crazy. You don't know how to play these songs." And so I really had to like woodshed and get the material down. But that was when it really turned the corner. When it's like I had to figure it out and really like step up to the plate. And that's what really set it off.
And so one of your first shows as, keyboards on your own was with Bill Clinton in the room.
Yeah, it was like it was a rough night, but we got through it. Everybody was like, "Yeah, man, you did it. You pulled through it and everything." And so that was cool. And but yeah, he was running for governor at that point, and I think he lost actually.
Okay.
But one of the only races I think he lost. I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, that was kind of a big deal. But it really did something to boost my confidence. In terms of like I can really do this, and it's not just, I was just like, at first it's just like, yeah, I'm just jamming with these guys and some girls, and it's hey, and it really took a turn into like, yeah, I like this, I can do this.
Yeah, absolutely. And because I know you've mentioned you didn't feel that accomplished as a player early on, but you felt that you had some natural talent there, which is obvious. What would you describe as your natural talents that you had early on that helped you then to develop as a full-on player?
I since I was not trained, like went to like a lot of music classes and everything like that. I went to a few until my teacher realized I was memorizing the lesson and coming back the next week. The thing was, my ear was the thing that I was really developing, and I could hear things, and I could mimic what I could hear, and I could figure it out, and kind of do that. And so that was a big force for me early on, to just to depend on what I heard and how to recreate it, you know. And then the other side of it, I was a geek, man. I still am, but technically, I like synthesizers, I like keyboards, and I like delving into how they work and that sort of thing. And so I really got into it, and that became my advantage of trying to figure out a niche for myself, whereas other guys were really supreme players. But I just was into like, okay, how can I create this sound? How can I do this? So that became a thing for me.
Yeah, no, great. And sort of jumping a little bit forward, you'd sort of moved a couple of times, and you're now located in Austin, Texas, and formed a band called the Bizness.
Mm-hmm.
So by that stage, you're feeling by this stage that you're sort of getting to know how things work and what the music industry's like?
Yeah, I mean, as far as that side of the music industry is, we were like a really high end bar band in terms of like we played a lot of cover music with the occasional originals that we would try and that we would try to do, but we knew what side our bread was buttered on, and we oftentimes we would do a lot of these college gigs in Sixth Street in Austin, Texas, and a lot of like that, and so we became very good at doing what it was we were doing. But the very cool thing about Austin and about gigging like that was all of the people that we ran across. I mean, the first tour bus that I went on was a big rock and roll band, and Kenny Loggins came and hung with us and played our whole third set with us.
Wow.
So that was, those types of things were awesome. And Matthew McConaughey worked down the street at the barbecue place, and we would go down there, and I remember running into Matthew at Prince's house, and just talking about the old days on Sixth Street, and all of that stuff. But REO Speedwagon was the first rock band tour bus I ever went on. It was like, whoa, this is awesome. I was like, it's the pirate's life for me. This was it. So it was great, man.
So did you ever have to slum it in small vans, or did you pretty much graduate to the big ones straight
Oh,
away?
Man, we had our own van and trailer, and that's what actually prompted the move to Austin. We had our own van and trailer, but we kept breaking transmissions, man. We like had to put three trannies in this van that we had because it just and we never really got ahead financially because as soon as we start, gigging, making some money, the car would like transmission go. That's $800-900 for a transmission and just all of this stuff. And so we just finally decided, let's just move. We're always driving to Texas, burning up the car. Let's just move there. And so, oh yeah, I did everything except for push the van, man. So it was, a lot of paying of the dues. We paid dues, man.
You sure did. Yeah, absolutely. And I think it was around that time, Morris, that you started to get into studio and production work. To sort of tell us about those early days working in the studio for a living and again, I suppose, what you learned as a player doing that.
Yeah, of course, being that my bands that we played in, I was in a band called Fingerprint and then the Bizness in Texas. And one of the things, we prided ourselves on being able to be a great cover band and be able to play that, but we always wanted to go to the next level of being like a band that was recording artists like Prince and like Michael and like people like that. That was our dream. It wasn't like we want to beat up on the best local band. That didn't mean anything to us. We wanted to really, we aspired to be like on the level of Prince. And so every chance we would get, and it was different back in the day, man. You didn't have laptops and software and things like this that you could record with. So we saved our money, we pooled our money, and then we went to a studio. We bought studio time, and we did things like this. And when we ran into Brown Mark from the Revolution, we put the money together to go and do a demo with him in his studio in Minneapolis. So that was a big deal, man, for us to, any chance we got to go into the studio and try to, create and do things. And we just had, back then it was a thing of, we would do these speculation deals where we'd find a studio and with somebody who believed in us and we would say, hey, we'll do speculation where we come in and cut. If we get a record deal, we'll pay you to, double or whatever you would normally get if we get signed, and they felt like these guys got it. And that's how we paid for a lot of stuff, is by trying to do deals like that where they believed in us and allowed us to use their studio because, man, studio time was expensive back in the day. And, and it was a big deal to say, yeah, man, we're going to studio. It's like, oh, y'all going to studio? It was a big deal. Everybody's got a studio now. You got a laptop, you got a studio. So that's what it was back in the day, though.
Yeah, and so I'm not sure, Morris, which one it was, but it was during one of those studio pieces you ran into Morris Day and the time, and tell us how that came about and you got into that sort of project.
Yeah, well, actually, Jerome Benton came across me. I was actually doing some work with Paisley Park at the studio as a production assistant, when they were shooting Graffiti Bridge. And I was driving the van. I'm picking up talent, I'm picking up George Clinton, I'm picking up Tevin Campbell, I'm picking up whoever needs a ride, to whatever the shoot is. And, I came across the guys in the time. And as a matter of fact, Craig Rice was one of the people working on the film, one of the directors, and said, we need somebody for George Clinton's band and suit up, get this guy, get me and get him an outfit and put him in the band with George Clinton. And I got close to, some of the guys from the time and everything. And Jerome had approached me about, Jimmy and Terry were unable to continue going on the road, and and that they would like for me to come in and join the group and at that point and go do this tour, to kind of like finish out this tour they had been on. And that's really, Jerome is, the reason why I got linked in with the time. So.
There you go. And so you just mentioned you're a production assistant at Paisley Park. How did you go from doing spec jobs in studios to getting the gig at Paisley Park?
Well, that's a great question. And the short answer, or the mid-long answer, is while we were doing this cover band thing, one of the great things that being a good band afforded us is that we were able to open for a lot of the national acts that would come to Memphis or to Texas. And when we're in Memphis, we opened for the group Maserati, who was Brown Mark's group that Prince had wrote the hit song 100 Miles an Hour. They were on tour, and we were able to open for them in Memphis, and then we opened for them in San Antonio. And then, Craig Rice was managing that band. And that allowed me to, all of us to meet with Mark and come. And then once Maserati had an opening for singer and a keyboard player, the lead singer for my band and myself got auditioned, and we got in the band. That facilitated our move to Minneapolis, and that's what got us in. But then once we got into Minneapolis and did the record, and everything was cool, everything fell apart when we were signed to Motown Records, and the MCA was bought out Motown, and that changed the whole landscape of who was running things. And there was Gerald Busby had taken over now, and it wasn't Barry Gordy. So it was crazy, man. And the band, we found ourselves in that early cut that happens when new administrations come and new A&R people, and so the band got cut. And so we just really found ourselves like, okay, well, we came up here to be in this band, and now we don't have a band to be in. And so now we're just working wherever we can. And Craig was great enough to put us on, not only sometimes for some sessions that we would get from Levi or Mark, but any work that we could do, that would throw us a bone, and for me, I was able to get a walkie-talkie and some van keys, and I could drive some people around and do. I just wanted to be at the studio, man, just to be around that energy and around that vibe. So sure, I'll drive. And, and that was kind of the vibe at first, but what it afforded us was an opportunity to be around all of our heroes and just kind of hang out in the environment, And so that was a big deal for us. And so we would do that.
That's great, yeah. And I'm assuming it was around this time that you obviously were in the iconic band G Sharp and the Edge. And obviously for those that aren't aware of the history with Prince, that was obviously the house band in Prince's club. So tell me about a tip. Well, how you got in that band, and tell me about what a typical gig was like at that club.
Well, number one, Greg and I, we came and formed that band once we left our band in Texas. Once we got there and decided, we wanted to do something locally. Then we put that group together with some people we knew around town, and everything. We got some really choice and some really good players. And then we formulated this thing. By this time, we had gotten Prince's attention, and as they were, getting ready to open this club, the Glam Slam. I mean, we were the house band. We got the house band gig, and so, man, it was phenomenal. We were like, man, this is a dream, because now we're going to be playing at this one of the best clubs, if not the best club in town at the time, and it's like there was full houses every night, and of course, Prince would be there, and Jimmy Jam and Terry, and just all of the Minneapolis music community was there. Mint Condition, they were from there, and so we had audiences like that, and so it was phenomenal, man. And we wanted to curate the set list, so we had some stuff that was cool. We played a little Prince, we played a little funk, some P Funk, and just different things like that. So it really turned out to be the audition stage for us going to do this thing for Prince, opening for him with Diamonds and Pearls with Carmen Electra. And I think he saw then with the band, like, okay, he was like, I like these guys. They're innovative. I was doing stuff that Prince wasn't even doing with the technology at the time with my keyboards. I was all into it, and I was using my sampler to like run drum loops and stuff on. And Prince saw it and was like, stop the presses. Levi, his guitar player, called me one night and says, like, Morris, what the heck? He said, Prince came in and like, stop the presses. Morris is down there using loops on our music. Because I took a group called Information Society, and there was a loop that I used from them, and I put it under 17 days, and he lost his mind. He was like, oh my God, that's crazy, and that really set us off, and that I think he said, yeah, these guys are ready for prime time, and we got to go and open for that tour.
Absolutely. And before we talk to that tour, I'm sure you totally remember this, Morris. What was your actual first face-to-face meeting with Prince, and what do you recall from that?
I'll say this: it was a very quick face-to-face meeting because we were at a club called the Fine Line, and Prince would frequent the club, and when there's live music playing, and he would come for different acts. And we had been waiting to, like, we knew at some point if we're in Minneapolis, we're going to run into him at some point. It's just a matter of time, and that would be our night, and it's like, wow. And then he comes in and we're like, oh, look, it's Prince, let's say hello, and and so we get all, prep. He's coming our way, and we were going to like, hey, Prince, we're the guys from the Bizness, and his bodyguards like put that big iron gate arm up on us and just like stood us all up, like, and we just like you just hit a steel bar, and all of us like fell backwards and everything. He just kind of walked by like, yeah, what's up, guys? And we just breezed on by. We were like, well, that was close, he was right there, but he just kept zooming on by, gave us a quick look, and just was like, yeah, deuces, I'm out of here. But it was cool. We were like, yeah, well, it was a rough start, but we'll come around, But it was cool though. We just wanted to establish ourselves on the map. You understand? So,
and do you recall your first actual conversation, Morris? Was it when you were working at Paisley Park, or when you were at the club?
It was funny, man, because I got to hang at Paisley and hang around mostly because of Mark Brown and then Levi Caesar. And Levi would occasionally, just to throw me a bone again, just give me a keyboard session on some work they were doing. And I got a chance to, and I'd been hanging out with Levi while he was doing stuff, and Prince would come in, but he never would talk to me, because he didn't know who I was. I was with Levi, so I was cool, because if Levi got me there, he's like, well, he's all right. I mean, he's with Levi, but still, I don't know who this dude is. So he just would like do his thing, go whatever. And I just knew from all of the people, all the talks you get in the beginning where they're like, all right, don't look him in the eye. Don't do this. And, so I just was like, cool. I just like, I didn't try to like, hey, Prince, did you check out our, it was just like, no matter what, I just always tried to be cool. But one of the first times, early on, when we were doing sessions, still working with the Carmen band, and I mean, just the early parts of the beginnings of all of that. I started working on this track, and he heard it. Eventually, he heard it from the movie, Graffiti Bridge movie, and I was just hanging out and kind of in the corner, and he was like, nice solo. Like that, just nice keyboard solo. And I was just in the corner, and I just was kind of looking around like you talking to me? And he's like, you did the solo, right? And I said, yeah. He said, yeah, then I'm talking to you. It's like, it's like, and I was like, wow, because he never said anything.
Mm-hmm.
I'd seen him, I've seen him, and he's just like, I don't know who this mystery meat soul brother is, so I'm just like, I'm good. I'll deal with you later. And when he heard what I played, then he was like, okay, this is cool. And there was other like meetings, like we've passed each other. And as a matter of fact, Craig was directing a video I was doing with Brown Mark. I was in this video called Bang Bang that Prince wrote for Mark. And Prince asked Craig about me. He asked him, he said, hey, is that the keyboard player? Can he really play? Because, a lot of times in music videos, I mean, the keyboard player in Graffiti Bridge was the hairdresser. He wasn't even a keyboard player. Prince just he liked his look before Tommy Barbarella got in the band. He liked his look and made the hairdresser the other keyboard player in the
That's
NPG. Right. And so, not everybody played. And so he just made sure, and Craig was like, oh, yeah, he plays. He's really great. This is all early stuff, So I'm just kind of weaving my way, and I'm like popping in and out here and there, making myself present and in the and in getting caught in different situations. until I familiarized myself with Prince and everybody at the studio.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I mean, when you're playing at the club, going back to your early days where you felt that you weren't that accomplished and, you know, you felt like you were faking it very early on and you obviously developed the skills, it must still be stressful having people like Prince in the audience, though.
Yeah, man, because one thing about Prince, he was so good at everybody's instrument. You know what I mean? He
Yeah.
he knew when there was wrong keyboard parts. He knew when there was wrong drum parts. He knew where there was wrong everything. And so it was always a constant thing of like, you're under scrutiny by one of the greatest to ever do it. And so you got to be on your, top level best to come out and perform, because everybody's checking. Everybody's saying, okay, let's see what these guys got, man. And I learned early on with Prince, everything is about attention to detail. You have to practice, and you have to, make sure you're not playing dog notes and things like that. That was always something that he looked at, and I really struggled like with that. And I didn't learn things the proper way, like scales and fingering positions and things. So when you don't practice the right way, it's just like somebody's strong, but then you're going to go try to lift weights in the Olympics. You have to know how to lift weights. I remember we had a singer, and he would kind of blow his voice like right 2 weeks in, and Prince would tell you, like, you have to learn how to control your instrument and protect your playing and your instrument. And so that was a big deal in terms of just, you know, being on your P's and Q's about how you play and what you play. And it was important for us to always try to put our best foot forward.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And so you're on that Diamonds and Pearls tour as the support act. What are your recollections of that time again, as far as what you learned and what were your thoughts on taking that next step up? And that's a big step up, obviously.
Yeah, and this parlays from the club thing, because Prince was actually helpful to us when we were doing the whole Glam Slam thing, and he would come to rehearsals and like drop in, and they also would give us some much needed equipment, from his massive equipment that he had. These guys need something, give them a keyboard they can use for this thing. And so that was a big help. And what it did was it really had us step up our game. And he would give us some advices about different arrangement type things we could do to enhance things. How to like ebb and flow of a show, and what songs here and what's here, ballads. And it was just this whole uh, thing about how to structure a performance. And so that was a very big help, man, coming from a master band arranger and from somebody who knew how to put stuff. I mean, we did pretty good on our own, but Prince was, of course, next level. And so it really brought a very sharp focus into what it was that we were doing and how to improve our show, and trying to work towards, like, we always wanted to be on like his level, you know, and then that kind of facilitated my graduation.
Yeah, I was about to say, you obviously were working on his level, because not long after that, he asked you to join the New Power Generation. I know you eventually were the musical director of NPG as well. So I'd love to talk about your role there as MD. But first, what were your recollections on needing to woodshed the songs? As far as, did you have much notice with MPG before you were out playing? How long did you have to learn the songs?
Well, yeah, it was kind of crazy, man. The whole way that it went down was quite a shock, because, you know, being out on the road with Carmen, and then just doing, we had like a 30-minute, 35-minute show or something like this. And so ours was like quick. It's in and out. We did the songs from our record, 30, 45 minutes. And that was it. So it was a limited amount of material that we had to learn. So we got one album, and we didn't even play every song on the record. And so it was a pretty easy thing. Now, as we were going along during this, I kept getting, comments from Carmen and Maite about what Prince would say about me. And she's like, both of them would tell me, like, Prince likes you, he thinks you're great, and blah, 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 and he's going to get you in his band. I'm like, man, get out of town, man. Like, he's got Barbarella and Rosie. He don't need me. Like, man, these guys are amazing. I was like, whatever, But then when we got off the tour and in the summer of '92, Rosie decided she was going to do her own thing. And I kept hearing rumors, I kept hearing things like, I used to go to this place called American Pro Audio, and a good friend of mine, Dick McCalley, used to own this place. And me, I'm like a drug addict when it came to like equipment and keyboard gear. So as soon as I get money, guess where I'm going? I'm going to American Pro Audio. I'm going down there to get some gear and everything. And Dick told me, he said, "Hey, Morris, man, congratulations, on your gig with the NPG." And I'm like, "What? Like, what are you talking about?" And he's like, "Oh, I thought you were, somebody told me that you were." I'm like, no, that's not true. I'm not doing it. I ran into Sonny, the bass player. So I'm like, "Hey, man, Morris, yeah, congratulations, man." And I'm like, and then Tony M. I ran into Tony at a music store as well. And Tony told me. So now I'm going like, okay, what the hell? Like, what is going on? Because everybody's telling me I'm in this band, and I ain't heard nothing about such a thing. I show up at the Glam Slam, like any Saturday night. This time, Gilbert Davison, who's the running the club, Gilbert is there, who was the bodyguard who stiff-armed us with Prince when we went to see him at the club. This is a history just circles around all these things. So Gilbert is waiting at the door, and he basically goes, "Hey, Morris, you want to be in the band?" Like, I couldn't even get in and get my ID for the body, the bouncer and everything. And I said, "Well, Gilbert, I heard about these crazy contracts Prince has. I got to think about this." And he says, well, here's the deal. He says, "I already told Prince you said yes." And so I said, "Oh, Gilbert, you shouldn't have done that, man." I said, "You shouldn't have done that." I said, that's, he said, "Don't worry about the contract. I'll sort the contract out. Don't worry about it." And that was the thing. He knew I was going to see Prince upstairs. And he knew that if I saw Prince and Prince asked me, "So, welcome to the band," I'd be like, what are you talking about? Gilbert knew he was baked chicken, because Prince asked him to do it. And he probably caught him again and said, "Did you talk to Morrison?" He's, "Oh yeah. He's good to go. He wants to, he's in." Yeah. Cause he's like, of course he's going to say yes. Of course he is. Who would say no? And he was really not prepared for my answer. And so he had to tell me what he had done. And I said, "Well, Gilbert, you shouldn't have told him that. I got to think about this thing." And it was just like, cause fear hit me. Like, I was like, "Oh my God," like, whoo, and sure enough, I get upstairs and I see Prince, and he's like, and so he puts the question to me again, like, "Hey, grandson, what are you doing? You want a job? Need some work?" And I said, "Yeah, I'll be ordered to mow that grass for you first thing Monday." I told him that and just made a joke, and he laughed about it. And that was always one of the things he liked about me. I always had some kind of joke. And I said, "Yeah, check my Palm Pilot. Yeah, I think I can do it." And said, "Cool." We shake hands. Well, I'm sitting there with him. I'm like in his booth. All these people are all around because, wherever Prince was just this crowd of people just staring at him, just looking at him. And so I'm sitting there and I'm just like, man, I can't even describe. I felt like I was standing on an electrical wire,
Yeah.
like energy was going through me. And I'm like, and halfway to my car, I'm like going, "Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God." I'm like, and then the other halfway, I'm thinking like, oh God, no, they're going to know I suck. And now I've screwed around and got to the big dance, and now I'm going to like fall on my face. And I was scared to death, like from the other half of my, like, what have I done? Like, oh my God, now I'm going to be exposed as a fraud. And, I'm thinking all of this stuff, man. This is the honest to God, because I'm really like going through it, man, because I'm like thinking, I've tricked these good people into thinking that I'm at this level where they are. And, but as history would dictate, here I am, the longest guy to stay with Prince. And I never thought it would be that way, but I'm grateful that it turned out as such,
Absolutely. And I assume the contract wasn't too crazy. I know reading other stuff, because I think Prince, you can understand why he had a lot of exclusivity stuff, didn't he, as far as he expected his guys to be available for him and stuff like that. So I assume your contract obviously worked out well, which is great.
Yeah, I actually didn't sign one for a long time. Gilbert didn't even, I guess Prince, it wasn't like Prince was going and checking everybody's contract. I mean,
No.
he had people that would handle that kind of stuff. And Gilbert just like made it disappear, like, like, don't worry about it. It was like, so I didn't have to have these NDAs and stuff early on and stuff. So I just kind of circumvented it. It just went
Yeah.
around, but it was cool, man. I mean, it's just like a fairy tale, the whole thing, how it happened and how everything transpired. So, I was very fortunate.
Absolutely. And so, I mean, to join MPG, learn the songs and be musical director, I mean, as you know only too well, it is hard work being a musical director in a band. It's not easy. It's a whole level of other responsibility, but then it's another whole level when you've got Prince as the band leader.
Yeah.
So, I mean, how did you guys develop a collaborative relationship where that worked really well?
Yeah. And to answer your earlier question, I think I went on a soliloquy. It was one of the things I learned early on with the band from the G sharp and the Edge and what we were doing with Carmen, as I learned then to really, really focus on the what the record sounds like and go as much as I can to reproduce the sounds on those records. I didn't have but a couple. I had a D50 and an S50, and I had to really learn how to like get whatever sound that I was hearing, and then to program that into so that I could have this sounding as close to the record, and then learn the record as close to the parts as I could do. Prince liked that. That's what his band did. And that was one of the things. So to answer your question about that, man, it was really a thing like you had to really woodshed, dissect this music, and then come back and just like blow him away by sounding like the record. And when I got to the NPG level of things, it just went on like just complete jet fuel at that point because Prince had an extraordinarily huge body of work that I had to go and like learn all the. Now the good thing is I learned a lot of the hits with my bar band, and I was kind of at least familiar with the way that we would do it. And when that was one of the things with my band, is like that's one of the things that Prince's band noticed about my band in Memphis is that they came down afterwards like, man, we see a lot of people play our music and they butcher it. You guys sound like us, like we do. And that was a big compliment for us because we wanted to play that music like the record as well. So we like fought over like chords, like, yeah, man, sign of the time. That's we were like, yeah, that's the F minor, nah. And we all of this stuff. And we really battled over what it was that we heard so that we could get it as close as possible. And that was something that went up on 10 once I got in the band with Prince. Like, bro, you have to go in the vault, get all of that stuff, sample some stuff. Some stuff is just like knowing the limitations of your keyboard and what programming techniques get you to this sound, how they made it, what did they use. If you don't have an Oberheim OB8 or OBXA, what do you use instead to sound like that? That's what you had to do. But once I got to Prince, I could get whatever I needed to get to create the sounds, and he would tell me what he used, and sometimes I would use it. I hated using OB because as dope as it was sounding, it was very unstable on the road, and so that was a problem. It did some weird stuff, like it died and then made death noises and stuff like this. So I used a lot of Roland equipment back in the day because Roland just had a thing where it was very versatile for me. Yamaha was the very versatile type stuff. It was on a lot of the records that he made. And so I used a lot of that stuff to kind of like reproduce a lot of the ARP stuff, and some of the other things that he was using at the time. And so that was just being able to kind of hear like an ARP Omni and the OB, and just kind of say, okay, I know that's an ARP Omni and I know that's OB, but I'm going to use this saw wave or whatever this is on this Roland, and I'm going to get close to it. And it worked out, man. So it was a lot of that. And I think that's what, got me to that. Prince actually told me one time when he came to our little rehearsal for Carmen, and I only had like these two kind of keyboards, and his people had racks and racks of keyboards and stuff. And he's like, dude, he asked me, he said, how are you getting all of this sound out of two keyboards? He's like, it's crazy. He was like sitting there, like looking, like, what is he using? It's like I just had a few little items and a couple things, and I had a little rack sampler that I could put some load in, some quick samples in. And he was like, what is he using? And I just said, well, hey man, I don't have that much gear, but I know how to like milk everything out of it, because when you only have two things, you learn it very well. Like what you need to get out of it in order to get everything you could possibly get out of it. And a great sampler like that and a great keyboard like a D50, which I had around that time, I could do anything, man. It was like, what I knew how to like sample this and like build my own samples and then like make them patches and stuff, horn things and stuff. And it was crazy, man. But he appreciated that and was like, he actually asked me to like be his keyboard like tech for Tommy. And Craig said, don't do it. He said, don't do it because that's how he'll see you, as he'll be a tech and that thing. And he said, don't do it. And I didn't do it.
But I mean, you deserve a medal alone for using the linear synthesis on a D50 to recreate sounds from 10, 15, 20 years before. That's amazing.
Yeah, and it was a booger bear, man. I mean, it wasn't as bad as a DX7 program.
No.
I used to have some DX stuff, and it was a nightmare.
That's a nightmare. Yeah.
Anything close to analog in that thing, it was just too pristine with this digital thing. I mean, it was great for bell tones and different things like that, and FM type synthesis stuff was just for like these really clean, but it's just for that grit. It just was not happening, man.
No.
I just had to get to a rolling thing, and even the D50 with some of the stuff. I come to be friends with Eric Persian, not Eric, but my man from Spectrasonics.
I thought that was Eric Persing, or am I thinking of it? Yeah.
He did like the super saw and like in the rolling stuff. He was a great inspiration in terms of like like how he programmed, and that was a big thing for me. I like loved all of Marcus Ryle, all of the programmers, Michael Boddicker, like all of these cats who were the programmer guys. I was into that whole deal. Bo Tomlin and like all of these cats that were the programmer guys. Of course the guys from Toto, David Page and all these guys from Toto. They were all like killer programmers and session guys. And I used to like see like what do they use and what sounds do they use, and they would program sounds for like the D50 and different things like this. And so it was just like a thing of like getting into that click. But that was a big thing for me, man. It's like figuring out how to manipulate these units and how to use them to get the sounds like that. And I think that was a big turn on for Prince. Like, like keep that side of the situation, man, because of the attention to detail like that.
That's right. And so with Rehearsals, Morris, for NPG, and we had the pleasure of a long time ago having Lisa Coleman on the show, and she talked about the Revolution days were the same as far as how intensive rehearsals could be. So tell us about, as a musical director in NPG, how the rehearsals ran and what your role was and how you made that work well.
Yeah. Well, first of all, music director is a term I always wore very loosely with Prince, because Prince was essentially in his band. All right. It wasn't like Michael Jackson where Mike's got, whatever, Greg Gaines or whoever it was that was going to be doing it, or Michael Bearden. Prince knew all of the parts. Prince played all of the parts. I was just MD when Prince was not around, and that sort of a thing, and just ran stuff when he was like busy in the office or on a trip or whatever. I didn't. I would run the band on that front. But it was main. And the other great thing about the MD in my case was all of the bands I were in, man, it was the easiest job in the world to be MD for people who knew their role and knew what they were supposed to do. I didn't have to tell nobody, anything like that, and when I was in the band, Levi was pretty much MD, and Michael Bland and Barbarella was there before me. And so I just took a back seat to whoever needed to do everything. But, over time, that became my role. Prince knew, okay, Morris can run rehearsals and give Teresa or whoever would give me the instructions as to what to do, and then do it. And when Prince gets back, then everything's in place. But the great thing was I didn't need to MD these guys, man.
No.
Like Ryan and Sonny, and everybody knew their parts. They knew what they needed to do. We just learned our parts and we played it, and we MD'd ourselves, and that was the thing. But what it does is, in that role, and it got to be more of a role as I went into later groups, different incarnations of the NPG. Because at that point now I'm the OG. I've been there already, and I know the ropes, and I'm just telling everybody what to do and how to do it, based on my time with Prince and blah blah blah. And so you just learn that there's a lot of songs. Everybody gets their part assignments, and everybody kind of generally knows if it's this, if it's an organ, I got it. If it's a piano, you got it. If it's this, with Renato or Cassandra, they were geniuses, both of them. And so it just was easy, man. My role as MD is probably so much different from so many other bands that had people like that, because I just had so many great players, man, that just like, but it does require somebody to kind of like, get an agenda and get the program so everybody knows what's happening and who's doing what. And this is the task that we have, and we got to knock it out. You know what I mean? So,
and I'm guessing before an average tour, Morris, you've got a week or two of the band rehearsing, and then Prince jumps in for a few days before, or how did it sort of tend to work?
No, not really. I mean, Prince was hands on like all the time.
The whole time, yeah.
I mean, he would basically, dude, we had to learn songs in like 15 minutes. Like Prince would come in with a new song, either that he just wrote or just one that he's got in the thing. And he'd give us a list either the day before or right on the spot, and we'd learn it on the spot. That happened.
Wow.
And so, it's a funny thing, because in the beginning you have the, whatever record we're working on. And then as we got farther into it, it became the hit parade, It's like, we're going to play the hits. So then that had to mean you had to go in the back catalog and get all of the, songs from back in the day. Because when I first started, then it was like every album we were doing, that became the tour. And then we pull songs from back at some other point, and some other hits from this thing. But mainly we focused on the Gold Experience or Com record or whatever it was that we were working on at the time. That was the main focus of the tour. And if we played on those albums, we already knew those songs because we played them in the studio. And so we would just play what we did in the studio, add a few more things from some, Kiss or whatever that we had from back in the day, add that into the set, and then that's your tour, previous records and blah, blah, blah. And so, of course, the longer we went, the more in depth the music got. It got to a point where we became this jukebox. I'd maxed out all of my spaces in my equipment. You can only have 128 patches in my OMS for my script, for all my songs, so I could load my samplers and stuff. I was running OMS, which allowed me to set up 3 samplers with different loading banks, because Prince went back to back, and some of these samplers took 30 seconds to load, like 7 minutes worth of samples in one time, 16 megs of RAM. It's archaic now. I mean, with the kind of power we have now, with virtual samplers, being able to use basically whatever your computer will allow. And back then, the hardware was very much set as to what it could do. A Roland 760 sampler had 16 megs of RAM in it that would allow you to load 7 minutes of mono, 3.5 minutes of stereo. That's what the limit was. You had to get it. That's everything you could load at one time. So that allowed me with Claire Fisher string arrangements that would fill that whole thing up. 16 megs would fill up quickly. And then I had to offset load samplers so that they would go immediately. I could push a button, it goes to the next one, to the next one, to the next one. So it was bananas, man. I mean, that whole thing was just so crazy to keep up with and to manage,